What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpollia sitting on the couch, making some money investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today is really a reminder to hopefully everybody that we should be focused on making money when we're investing in fractional real estate online. Um, I think that there are, if you're involved in the loft, and I know, I hate to keep talking about this stuff, but I feel like every day there's just some new developments. If you are involved in the Lofty Discord, you can see that there are lots of angry people about all the Yom stuff, and there's been, a lot of different proposals going out lately. And today, for the first time, I saw one where this property, 122 Florida Park Drive, there was a vote that went out to move this to what is it called? A co-ownership property that was brought to the market by Cal. Cal is the owner of Yome. If you're not making that connection, I think most people, if you're involved on Lofty at all, you probably have seen this. So this is one that he brought on under the co-ownership structure. He had bought it. So he owned it. He brought it to the platform, moved the ownership to the DAO, just like all the others, sold out tokens. I believe that happened last year, early last year, before I even was investing on the site. He had been the manager, and with everything else going on, some of the owners on here got uncomfortable, and they said, "Hey, let's change the management." And the vote that was put out reads very much like that. It references all the issues and how there's just a lack of trust, and they want to have Alec come in, or Walick Property Management, which is Alec, uh, come in and basically audit the transactions that have been done. But there's people that like this property, and they just think it would be better in others' hands. But I think there's also people uh, that jumped on board this, just thinking, oh, it's going to be a good deal because it's going to have a new manager. And so if we look at the order book, um, there were quite a few transactions in this last week or so. Uh, a lot of buying and selling going on. Um, and one of the things, I would just not be in a hurry to buy these, right? Like, so I had mentioned probably about a month or two, maybe a little over a month ago, that I thought some of the best opportunities were going to be buying some of the Yome managed properties. I thought there'd be a nice pop when some of the management changed hands. That was before some of the stuff came out about title being moved over into Yome's name. Um, three some of those instances it was actually approved as part of a vote. At least one of them, it was just the only thing that was approved was a refinance, and he went and moved ownership uh, as part of that transaction. That was a huge surprise to a lot of people involved. Um, but all the ones that I thought had where I saw the potential were we have a real big discount, to the market price. This one is not that, right? Like this is a property that it doesn't appear to be a big discount when I dig into it. I'm not going to do a full due diligence on it. I just want to talk about a few things that I think are risks here that some people are missing. There's one huge one that I haven't heard anybody else mention yet. But so, there's been some discussion there's been a tenant in place who's supposed to have, they were supposed to have a rent to own agreement, but it seems like that never actually happened. There is this rent to own agreement here. This one's not signed, but it's been talked about, even since long before this March 2025. Um, I am a former attorney, but I never give legal advice. But if you are thinking about buying this property, I'd encourage you to read this and decide if you think this is, a legitimate contract that was drafted by an attorney, uh, or if you think that this is just another either Chat GPT or copy and paste. I don't even think this is Chat GPT. I think it could very well be just a very poor copy and paste job done, because this rent to own agreement, this lease, there's just a lot of inconsistencies in it that I think you don't have to. It's not legal advice to be able to just look at it and see that you know two things contradict each other as far as so I'd encourage you, if you are thinking about buying into this property, you definitely need to read through this. This isn't signed, the copy that's in the Dropbox, but it doesn't mean that a copy of this hasn't been signed, right? And so even though that this vote went out, um even though now the results are back and Walick is in charge, I think it's very much possible that we get, that as part of that audit, what comes to light is, it's possible the tenants already signed this, or they signed a different agreement that, some version of this. What's required here is a security deposit, and there was a $15,000, some, in that ballpark, um, what did they call it in here? Um, you know, they're well, okay, so let me get back to that. But so $15,000, where is it? The option consideration, which they're calling, yeah, not non-refundable option consideration. And so one of the things that they're doing here is this document is both, is trying to be both an option contract and a lease. Um, I think it's been best practice, at least in a lot of states, for quite a while, to create two separate documents when you do this. Have the option contract with its separate consideration, and the lease contract and its separate. But whether or not this flies in Florida, I really don't know. That's I think the least of my concerns with this property, but it's something to look at. So this $15,000, it doesn't even say when it's going to be paid, but typically your option consideration is paid at the time you sign that agreement. So, has this been paid? Is this money that Yom is currently holding? Um, Two things to think about, right? From this document. And then a third is, so the lease, this agreement is for $2,800 a month, but they're saying, but $300 a month is going to be credited towards the purchase price if this closes. This used to be extremely common. I used to see this all the time when I got into this industry. But as lending standards tightened, I see this less and less, and this is the reason why. When you're getting a loan to purchase a property, your lender will often limit the amount of concessions, or funds that you can get basically from the seller. And one of the things that a lot of lenders will actually count as concessions from the seller, or credits from the seller, will be these lease payments, unless they're really properly documented. And so I've seen this become an impediment to actually being able to close on the tenant side, right? Because okay, they did this for 5 years. They've got, let's see, $15,000 in these rent credits, plus they have their $15,000 option fee, right? And all of a sudden you have 30,000 bucks that you're trying to get credited for on the settlement statement, and a lot of lenders will say, "Oh, wait, I don't really want to deal with that." Now, that's not the end of the day, because honestly, I don't love. So what I was getting to in the beginning, though, is, you know I think that you should really be thinking about what are your risk adjusted returns here, right? If I am buying these properties that clearly could have some clouded title, could have, has some sort of fight with the manager, have unclear relationship with a tenant, I want to have significant upside. Well, if the tenant has the right to buy it for $450,000 today, in the future, and our current, it's a profit from our current market cap. But like, if you think about, okay, 5 years from now, that's not a huge amount of appreciation over that period of time. So basically, and they're not going to buy it, if because they have an option, if this were signed, they're not going to buy it if it hasn't appreciated, right? So you're not getting that money. But if it and a lot of people will be like, well, maybe they want to buy it anyway. Well, yeah, but they're not going to be able to get a loan for it to buy it to be able to buy it, right? But then on the flip side of that, um, they're uh, if the market appreciates quite a bit more, they can still just buy it for 450, even if it was worth 500, right? So we're limiting our upside when we enter into an option agreement, but it doesn't protect the downside whatsoever. One of the things that let's see, where did this go? I had it, and I know I closed that window. One of the things that why you would do a lease to own or rent to own is that you don't have you typically think you have a better buyer, right? A better tenant, right? They're more committed to the property and whatnot. This isn't the spot where it is, but this is Yome's, where they're marketing for their rent to own, uh, tenants. But this isn't the spot where I saw it. But one of the places where it said, I mean, this is a relatively low credit score to begin with. Um, but one of the places they're like, oh, you don't even have to have good credit, and we can do this for you. So I don't necessarily think we're getting the benefit of having that better tenant in this spot. Maybe we are. We don't really have any information about the tenant. But so basically, we have a lease in place that is, not a great lease relative to the price of the property. Like if you look at, the cap rate of this property, it's fairly low relative to some of the others. Um, we don't have any, we don't have much room to the upside as far as appreciation because we gave that up with an option agreement. Um, and then so then we have this balloon note, which everybody seems to be aware of this. But this is one of the only reasons it works is right. We've got this 5% balloon note, but this was one of my concerns. Is like, okay, if you're taking management away from Cal, he's the one who's responsible for this note. There's a balloon. How motivated is he really to fix this problem for the Dow, right? If he doesn't have a lot of ownership, the lender, this Frank Jarvis, when I looked in the public records, this is actually the person that sold it to him, to Cal. So this is like, or to Yom. So this is like this was just an owner finance transaction anyway. So, um, it's not like you have a professional lender on the other end who's really gonna, be savvy about, collections on that note, especially other than just a foreclosure on the Dow, right? And then, okay, if we had to refinance this, and so interest will be charged, right? And the full amount of principal but let's see, I will pay interest in this amount, right? And so, this is a really low interest rate relative to what rates are today, right? I mean, if especially on an investment property, if this goes to get if this needs to be refinanced by the Dow in the next year, um, the interest rate is probably going to be above our cap rate, which means, we're losing money on that financing, right? And so this all of a sudden becomes a property where, okay, we don't have very much cash flow. Maybe we actually switch to negative cash flow once that refinance happens. We don't have a lot of upside in appreciation because that potentially a tenant has an option if that agreement has been signed, which we haven't seen that. Um, if there's been a $15,000 option consideration paid, you have to figure out where that is, right? So that's some of the problems that we have. But what really shocked me is so okay, so there was a vote to allow Cal to refinance this, right? This was a few months back. So he was given permission to refinance this. Well, we know in his mind, if he has the right to refinance it, he has the right to deed it over. I mean, we saw that on that Claiborne property where he said, well, no, of course, if I refinance, I have to deed it back to myself, right? And so I was looking in the public records and let's see, is this the one? Or is this, oh, yeah, this is the one, right? This is, well, if we actually look who owns it right now, it is primary owner, Yome Nursing LLC, right? So it appears that well, at a minimum, this was put back into Yom's name. So this happened, a little over a month ago. Um, my guess is that this happened in conjunction with a refinance, although we don't know that because we don't have any documents, but that's been what we've seen so far. So if you are buying into this right now because you think a lot of the risk has been taken out by the change in PM, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that I think there's still a lot more risk in it, right? I mean, like, okay, so now we don't have title to this property. Uh, if you get it back, there doesn't appear to be a whole lot of upside because somebody's holding an option on it. It's probably going to be negative cash flow if you have to refinance that loan. Now, who knows? Maybe he went out and got a much better loan. We don't know. If that happened, it's possible that you're better off. But the amount of buying that happened in this week was just really surprising to me at, very close to par value. I mean, these were all, there's still a bunch, yeah, there's still more being sold. I don't know. I thought that looked, I thought this was noteworthy enough that I wanted to at least talk about it, right? And there's other properties that he's the co-owner of, that, I think people are proposing the same thing. I haven't really followed that because, I haven't been. I own some properties that Yom took over. I had already been avoiding their properties to begin with. I think their co-ownership properties, you have even more of this entanglement and potential risk of, if he's on the loan, uh, it gives them more control over the asset because, um, until that gets refinanced out, right? But so in this situation, I just don't see the risk reward, equation making any sense at all. I mean, I don't, I don't, it's really hard for me to understand where that's at. I've talked to a couple people now, that did buy into this week. Um, and I'm worried that at this point, not everybody is truly focused on making money. Um, I think that, I mean, just not being an owner of this property anymore. And I know, uh, you know, hopefully that just gets deeded back. And it was something that he just did, as part of the refinance, like we had seen before. But you just never know. I mean, if you saw, my video last night where we were talking about, um, you know, I'm still not in a position where I'm prepared to say this is actually fraud going on. I mean, and you watch my whole video from yesterday if you didn't see it about my opinions on that. But it is definitely a situation where a lot of bad decisions are being made at a minimum. Here he did, like, again, he got the vote. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. He did get a vote to refinance this. And just like on Claiborne, that might be all that's going on, right? When he went to refinance it, he also moved over the moved over that ownership because he thought that's the only way you can refinance it. And for a lot of lenders, it might be the only way he was going to be allowed to. But in this situation, um, I would just I don't see. It's really hard for me to understand why somebody would look at this deal today. And yeah, it does have a good rental yield. I mean, I'll give you that. But as soon as that debt changes, that's one of the things that I dislike about a lot of these co-ownership property structures is that, the yield is only there because the debt's being paid for, because there is leverage and the debt's being paid for outside of the DAO. And if we're in a situation where the co-owner, if we can't count on them to make payments, which, with everything else going on, I think that's a legitimate risk to worry about. I mean, I worry about that on all of these. Even saw me make that comment on Earl's Hawaiian property, right? Like, if something were to happen to him and he couldn't make those payments, like there's risk that, or whoever's required to make those payments, there's risk if that doesn't happen and the DAO has to take over. What does it look like with the DAO paying that debt? And again, with the low cap rate, and oh, it's not hugely levered, right? It's like 250 or something on a 380 valuation. But it's definitely dilutive debt, it's definitely hurting it. So I don't know. I think that's for all those reasons, I'm all for the people that already own this property wanting someone else to come in, take charge, understand the situation, remedy it if possible. But it's really hard for me to get on board with wanting to buy into this just because that's happening, right? I think that it's because it's tough to know without signed documents. Like the last signed lease agreement that is actually in the Dropbox is expired by quite a bit, right? Like when the last lease is yeah, it expired in February, right? So it appears we're on month to month, but it could be that this new agreement has been signed. Um, and like I don't know, just if you just read this agreement and then look at any lease that you've ever had, um, and I know sometimes sometimes I'm a little bit of a snob when it comes to documentation because I have seen just like all the things that can go wrong, and like if they're not, a regular residential lease is often more than 6 pages, and then on top of that, they're trying to cover um, this option agreement in here as well. So I think they're trying to cover too much ground in a very short agreement. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. But again, we don't know if that's signed. So going back to the risk adjusted return, like I just don't see it here. Like if I had to, because that's one of the things we should always just be comparing, like when we're looking across properties. Um, and so, if this is, if the motivation is to just make money here, which is what I think it should be, it's really hard for me to get on board with paying anywhere close to, the $49 a token here. I mean, I don't know. I like you. Yeah, I mean it's really tough. I think at this point it could be a little bit of a discount to the actual value that the property is today. But if we're giving somebody, an option to buy this, how long does this go into the future? Um, oh, this is only 4 years, right? So we're only giving them 4 years, but still, I mean, like, um, there's certainly no ability for sort of outsized appreciation during that period of time. I guess I don't know the 385 to 450. It's not that, if you look at like the deals that are out there that are like $22 a token, have a lot of the same things to worry about, although don't have this debt issue. Um, and I think that the real value is already, 35 or $40 a token. When I compare that to this, it's really hard to understand why I would be on board with buying into this, even though it is, a somewhat decent yield right now. I think this is just such a fragile yield because either that debt is going to have to get pulled into into the DAO, or someone new is going to have to decide to become the co-owner and pay that debt. I think there's very little, um, you know, motivation for someone to do that. Even when, like, the main reason I think that co-owners do it when they bring a property to the platform is it helps them sell their tokens at a kind of a bloated price point. And so without that, I don't think we're going to find somebody new that's going to say, "Oh, I'll go ahead and refinance that." And so I don't know, but and maybe it's already moot. Maybe there's a new loan on this property already. And if there is, I would just never buy into a property without understanding, what that debt structure looks like, because maybe now it's even, a bigger payment, right? I mean, I'm assuming if it just was refinanced last month, that the interest rate's at least 6.5%. Um, I don't know. I mean, maybe he renegotiated with the seller. I mean, that's something that is possible when you have a loan in place with that's owner financing, and they had a balloon. So, sometimes you will get to renegotiate that, have a new maturity date. pay some additional something, so that's possible. But yeah, at this point, it's just 100% speculation. The one thing that we do know is the public records show the property is not in the Dow's name. Um, and we do not know the status of, like he made an announcement that this was signed, but there hasn't been any update in the Dropbox with a signed version of it or anything like that. And that's been a little while now. So anyway, that's all I have to say about this one. Um, you know, I just want to. I think there's just a lot of angry people out there, and I've talked about quite a bit. My goal in this channel is to create a community of fractional real estate investors that are all like pushing to make this, the ecosystem better for everyone. Like this should be a spot that we all make money, right? And so, um, I would like to be friends with everybody involved in this process. I think obviously, we've been put in a really tough spot by Yom, by either just a bunch of poor decisions or something worse. And we're working our way through it. But I think that the tensions are really high just across the board. Like a lot of the people that are normally pretty friendly with each other, there's a little bit more snappiness happening. And, I know that's not easy for anybody. And I think that in that, like and I've mentioned it a few times, I think within the chaos, there's opportunity to profit. But I think that like pushing too hard for that, to the point where, I think there's some people making some decisions where it's not necessarily helping anybody, right? Like, I mean, I just I don't see wanting to buy this to move it to a new manager when we don't even know, what the status of the current debt is. And I mean, I understand wanting to have someone, check on that stuff if I own it already, but to buy it to do that is, it's hard for me to wrap my head around. So, even though this, so I guess, really I one, just want to caution people to be careful, right? Any of these properties that you're looking at that you want to buy, please check the public records. Make sure that there's at least some ownership there from the Dow, at a minimum. And try to understand what are the other, you know, potential, obligations that the Dow has signed up for. Because I mean, like if this is the agreement, it's not the end of the world. It's just, I think it's problematic from a couple of different perspectives, and I've already mentioned it. Like understanding what's going on there, um, and then just yeah, yeah. I mean, in this spot, I want a huge reward if I'm going to take the kind of risk that comes with this sort of murkiness in ownership. And are we going to get the rents that have been being paid? Are we going to get is that deposit, has it already been paid, and is that going to be a problem to get back? um I don't know, it's a tough one for me to get on board with. If you are somebody who's buying this up because of this situation, I'm really interested to know why. I know, I have talked to a couple of people already, but I just don't see it still. I still don't see the opportunity, right? Like $22 a token to maybe get to 35 seems like it makes a ton of sense. Buying this up at 386,000 to maybe sell it at 450. Okay, minus transaction costs. Like there's no profit there. That's not very much upside to be taking on the level of risk that we see. And maybe we just assume that, oh yeah, but that owner, that buyer's just not going to purchase because, most of the lease options that I've ever been involved with never closed, right? Like the tenant just moves on and forfeits their deposit. Um, I mean, that's a very common scenario. So I mean, maybe that's, and honestly, if everything else gets cleared up, that's probably the best case scenario here, depending on what a real lease rate should be for this, right? Like, did we even look at that? What is Zillow? What's the lease estimate? If we, let me see. I'm gonna check that, and then I think, wait a minute. Does Zillow think? Zillow thinks this is worth way less money. That's crazy. And it thinks the rent is, oh, so, I mean, if those two things were true, we're in a lot of trouble. Now, it is completely rehabbed, or at least it looks to be. It looks a lot better than those pictures, but it is the same size, though. It's a 3-2. You know, I don't mean to laugh because I know some people might be stuck in this. But hopefully this is wrong, and the homes.com price, hopefully you're closer to the higher end of that value. Um, New owner seller financing available. Wait, what is this? Is this when the oh that yeah, as of October. Okay, so that's when they bought it. So anyway, that is all I wanted to say about this message. If you're out there, making some moves in this chaos, please just be careful and be sure that the potential upside on your deals is going to be good enough, for the risk that you're taking. I forgot to say, please like and subscribe. And also, if you're not in my Discord channel, the just generic fractional real estate investors channel, there's a link to that in the description to this video, as well as all the other sites I'm currently invested on. Please do due diligence on those sites and any properties that, just because I buy something doesn't mean that you should. And just because I wouldn't buy this doesn't mean that's the right answer, right? Like maybe for somebody, there's a justification that I'm missing. Maybe you want to move into this and you think if you're, you're a token holder in it, or maybe you think this, see, that's the thing. Like, I was going to say, maybe you think it's going to appreciate a whole bunch. But if you do, you're nerfing that upside with the option contract. So you're kind of screwed there. So, am I allowed to say that? I think I am. Um, Now I think I'm really done. Love to hear some discussion on this because it's really hard for me to get behind. I almost never want to buy something at the $50 token price to begin with. But in this instance, it's just really it's such a murky situation that it's really hard for me to. Now, if you were buying some of these, what are these dips? Let's look at how much these dips were. What's the cheapest one? 46. I mean, that's just not even I mean, it's a discount, but, and we're not going further back than that right now. Yeah, I don't know. I'm super curious. What's the end game, right? What's the end game? Somebody tell me in the comments. Tell me what the end game is, please. I'm sure you've seen that reference a few times now. Anyway, that's it for me for today. Until next time, I will keep making mistakes so that you don't have to, and also doing my best to help you avoid some as well.